I didn't see a whole flashing hand go up though. Steve, thanks very much. I sure appreciate it. I get a little bit concerned when people say a disaster specialist. It means that I go in and help people after disasters. I don't cause disasters. I do that a little bit at home. Welcome. This is, I think, been about 8 months in the planning. I want to thank Darlene very, very much for giving me a call, inviting me to come in, and I'm thrilled to be here. I just hope by the time we're done, you're also thrilled that I came. I don't know if that's going to be the case. We're going to have evaluations once we're finished, and if you'd be kind enough to leave those for me, I'll complete those for you. Is that okay? All right. We're going to have a chance to be able to do 2 talks today, and I'm looking forward to both of them. And the first one is a subject I have a chance to be able to speak on quite regularly. It is change, and it's going to be I'll put it to you this way, it's going to be an extremely different way or unique way of looking at change. We're going to look at a couple of different categories and such, and I'll even give you an idea as to what we're going to take a peek at. Now, the challenge with this is that I come with, as Steve said, a disaster management background. So some of the change that I've seen occur over the last 27 years, and I probably respond to about 200 incidents a year. And so I have a company, and this is what we do. I also have a private practice in our town in Newmarket, Ontario, and have a number of different specialties. But for the most part, what will occur is someone will call, or they'll come in to see me after a significant change has occurred in their lives. And most often, those are the changes that are imposed upon them or happen suddenly. So you'll hear me talk a little bit about my classroom in a second. You'll hear me talk about some of the things that I've learned, not necessarily from the schooling, but more importantly from the people who've had the honor and privilege of being able to speak with. Does that make sense to you? As professionals, I'm sure you probably encounter that all the time, where those people whom you have the privilege of working with will teach you considerable amount. And before I even get started, I had a woman come in to see me just before. This has been a bit of a crazy week because I was speaking in Vancouver and flew back in, and I was talking to Steve about the day of the week. We'll say it was Tuesday. Had a chance to be able to speak with her. I've been working with her now for about 2 years. And at the end of it, she said, "Your face, it's just bright." And I said, "Okay, that's nice. How come?" And she said, "Just as I'm talking about these things and the things that I've learned about myself." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you why. You're teaching me." She said, "Well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm teaching you, and I'm the client." And she asked for a refund, actually, at the end of that. So I promised her that all endorsements and that sort of thing will go directly to her. But I say that to you because through her change, through those changes, and same sort of thing that you'll encounter with the people in your lives, the people in your professional lives, you're going to learn a significant amount about this very subject. So we're going to do a couple of things. We want to take a look at the 4 different types of change. Now you have to appreciate, I'm the kind of guy who I always found it difficult to compartmentalize things because I never believe it's that neat and tidy. You know, I think for theorists like myself or academics, there's a tendency we need to do that. But we'll call it 4 different types of change, and it bleeds in one to the other in terms of the personalities. And this is what I want to look at as well. Every one of us bring a different personality to change. And I'm also going to say that that personality, change personality, will change as our lives continue. My change personality when I was 21 years of age is very different now than I'm 51 years of age. It has to do with different things in our lives, adaptability and such. We're also going to take a look at some stages. Now this will make some sense to you because I want you to be able to see some very realistic examples. These are things that happen in all of our lives. We're going to take a look at some strategies, and I think it's unfair for me to introduce the idea of how change impacts us without giving you a couple of hints as to what it is that you can do. Now, I've got to tell you that I'm probably a little bit of a self-care fanatic. And so there's a bit of a theme of self-care when it comes to adapting to change. And the other term that I'll give you a bit of a trailer on, or a preview of, is the term proactive or on purpose. Because nothing of any positive significance is going to occur by accident. So, if you can pardon me, I thought that made for a nice sound. And the final thing that we're going to do is take a look at how it is that we can change in a positive way. So let's move forward a little bit. How many people commute? Does anyone commute? Now understand, you're talking to a guy from Ontario, right? Really? Is that a commute? All right. Sometimes bad things happen at a commute. Now I'll never forget this. Really quickly, years ago, I don't know if it was probably my brother's 40th birthday. I had a chance to come back to Moncton. It's always a privilege to come back. And because George and I were originally brought up in St. John, New Brunswick, so they had asked me to leave the province years ago, and periodically now I'm able to come back on a day pass. So I came back for his 40th party, and his mutual friend of ours, we grew up with him. He approached me, and you know, once people know you're a therapist for a living, there's a tendency for people to approach you. Do you ever run into that sort of thing? So he did. He said, Bill, look, I got a problem. And I thought he was joking because he had a keys in his hand, and I said, what's up? He said, I've got a problem, I've got stress. I said, what's the stress about? My commute. He said, I used to have an office downtown St. John, and he said, my commute was 7 minutes. And I was about to hit the guy. I thought, are you kidding? I'm traveling an hour and a half each way downtown through insanity to downtown Toronto. To probably make less money than anyway. Forget about that. And then he says, well, now it's changed, Bill. I've moved, and my commute's 13 minutes. Can you imagine? So I said, listen, it was really a pleasure speaking with you, and by the way, this is billable time. So, anyway, 13 minutes. So let's talk about daily commutes. This is a tough daily commute as far as I'm concerned. You okay if we do this without sound? Okay, I think you're going to find it a tough commute either way. And I had these two videos in there, and the first one certainly will go without sound, and we're okay. So let me just let you look at that for a second. My apologies.
Well, if we had to black the screen out so we can't tell.
Thank you. That's the last time he changes his route to go to work, I can tell you that. Let me ask you a couple of quick questions if I can. How many people over the last 12 months have gone through what they would consider a change in their lives? Anyone? Most of us have. How many people over the last 10 years have gone through what you might think to be a significant change in their lives? Most of us have. And you know, one of the things that's intriguing about that, as much as we think we don't want it, in fact, it's going to happen to us either way. Now, you're going to hear me talking a lot about generational differences. And generational differences, I'm not just talking about chronological generational differences. I'm talking also about attitudinal generational differences. And you're going to hear me reference a guy in a little while who I happen to be a real fan of, and that's my father-in-law, who's soon to be 88 years of age. And he's taught me a good deal about the difference between chronological and attitudinal generational change. So I just want to give you an idea where some of those lessons are going to come from today. And again, they're going to be a little bit unorthodox because for the last 27 years, I've been honored and privileged to be able to work with a number of groups around the world. And a
This is
number of,
advancing, eh?
pardon me?
That's supposed to advance, I think.
It'll do it on its own, yeah, that's perfect, thanks. And when I say that too, because oftentimes when we're getting together with an academic group, they'll say, well, what is your academic background, what are your degrees, and that sort of thing. And you know, that's important, I guess. But for the most part, as I said earlier on, it's those lessons, in fact, that we're going to learn from experience to experience. And those lessons taught me, especially when it comes to this subject matter, a significant amount about our adaptability, if we choose to do so. And again, that has to do with our personality. And I happen to enjoy watching and witnessing people go through significant change. I don't like to see them go through pain, but I will absorb those lessons. So much of what we're going to talk about today is going to come from exactly that. A few years ago, I had the privilege of working with a gentleman by the name of Jim Harris. Does anyone know that name by chance? Jim Harris used to be at one point the leader of the Green Party. Now, before Jim Harris was the leader of the Green Party, and I had a chance to do some work with him, he had launched this book called The Learning Paradox. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it as it applies to change. And Jim currently is a consultant to the British government, and he's helping them transition from one piece to another, from one step and stage to another. But I thought there'd be some lessons that we could learn from Jim that will kind of bridge us into the subject that I want to talk about. He talks about something called the learning paradox. And the learning paradox, for the most part, is what we have to do is we have to learn, and then we have to unlearn something that we've learned in order for us to relearn something new. Now, we do that consistently anyway. We don't even realize that we're doing it. For example, if I were doing something around the house, I'm probably the least handy guy in the entire world. You know, I'll learn something that I think I'm doing, and then I'll unlearn it simply because I've just damaged myself, and then I've got to relearn something else. Is anyone else handy like I am? Okay, all right, so the injuries and that sort of thing, thank goodness we weren't in hospitals. But I say that too because there are many examples of learning, unlearning, and relearning, and however, there are areas where we get stuck, where we just won't do it. We become somewhat stubborn. So how is it that adults react to change? Big, broad brush statement. How many people in the room have something to write with, have a pen? Okay, for those of you, and does anyone have something to write something on? You don't all have to have it, but if you do, I want to be able to do a bit of an exercise with you. Okay. Tell me when you're armed and ready. You absolutely can write on those brochures. They're no value whatsoever. Okay, they make for great kindling around December and January. Okay, so for those people who are armed and ready to go with a pen on something, I want you to mark down your name, first and last, 3 times. Okay, are you ready? Go. Gives me a chance to drink water. Okay, 3 times. Now I understand that people in Moncton are a whole lot faster than the rest in Canada, so ready for the next stage? Okay, now change hands. Okay? Ready? Same thing, change hands. Using the opposite hand, now I want you to write your name 3 times. Ready? Go. Well, as long as the check passes, that's all I'm concerned with.